In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was creation itself. This ancient biblical testament to the power of creation remains the same through time, reminding us that to create is to participate in the divine state of things. Throughout history, certain individuals have risen above the ordinary, their creative force leaving us and the aforementioned state of things forever transformed, sometimes in complete disbelief. These creators, these luminaries of human incendiary fire, these polymaths are today rooting dusty tomes instead of being on all of our desks and shelves and laptops and phones. They are living fountains of inspiration, their works continuing to transform lives millennia after their passing. When Plato established his academy in the olive groves of Athens, could he have imagined that his dialogues would still be igniting minds in the age of artificial intelligence? When Leonardo da Vinci filled his notebooks with flying machines, did he know he was sketching the dreams that would eventually pierce the heavens? Why study these creators? Because in their stories we find the eternal patterns of human achievement. As Jorge Luis Borges observed, the fact is that poetry springs from the human soul, and it is in the soul that we must seek it. The same is true for all creative endeavors. They spring from that mysterious intersection of inspiration and effort, of vision and persistence. Consider how these creators have shaped our world. The mathematics of Newton transformed the way we understand the cosmos, being the best toolkit for modern physics. His famous words, "If I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants," remind us that creation is always a dialogue with those who came before. The psychological explorations of Jung unveiled the vast territories of the collective unconscious, showing us that creativity draws from the deep wells of human experience. His concept of synchronicity suggests that meaning itself might be a creative force in the universe. The artistic vision of Michelangelo gave form to the ineffable, his Sistine Chapel ceiling becoming what Goethe called the sight of all sights, which is pure human potential reaching toward divine know-how. Each creator we'll study is responsible in a way for the life we have today, their contributions forming what Teilhard de Chardin called the noosphere, the sphere of human thought enveloping our planet. To understand creativity is to understand the very essence of human consciousness. As Nietzsche proclaimed, one should hear only the music of life. We ourselves must become the eternal joy of becoming. This eternal becoming, this continuous creation, the Ouroboros, is what separates mere existence from truly living. The creative process itself mirrors the great mysteries of the universe. Just as quantum physics reveals a world of infinite possibilities collapsing into concrete reality, the creative act transforms the potential into the actual. Werner Heisenberg's uncertainty principle finds its echo in the creative process. The moment of inspiration is like a quantum state, impossible to pin down without changing its nature. Creativity requires the courage to let go of certainties, wrote Erich Fromm, and indeed every great creator we'll study demonstrated this courage. Consider Tesla's visions of wireless power transmission, or Jung's willingness to explore the depths of the collective unconscious. Their creativity was all about seeing reality in a fundamentally different way. They didn't try to make something new, they wanted to know and do. And that was the key to their newness and notoriety. This is the paradox you have to accept. The creative act is, in essence, an alchemical process. Just as the medieval alchemists sought to transform lead into gold, true creativity transforms the base metal of ordinary experience into the gold of new understanding. This is what William Blake meant when he wrote, "What is now proved was once only imagined." Innovation is creativity's manifestation in the world. While creativity is the internal spark, innovation is the fire that changed and still changes the world. As Arthur C. Clarke noted, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. The greatest innovators, from Leonardo da Vinci to Elon Musk, have always operated at this boundary between the possible and the magical. But innovation isn't limited to technology. Confucius innovated in moral philosophy, Shakespeare in language, Einstein in our very conception of space and time. Each pushed the boundaries of what was thought possible in their field. The story of human potential is written in the lives of these creators. As Michelangelo saw the angel in the marble and carved until he set it free, each creator helps us see the potential waiting to be unleashed in every human soul. Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs culminates in self-actualization, but the greatest creators show us something beyond even this, what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming who we truly are. The privilege of a lifetime, Joseph Campbell reminded us, is being who you are. Progress isn't a straight line, but a spiral, returning to eternal themes with ever-deepening understanding. As Hegel described history moving in a dialectical spiral, so too does human progress move through the contributions of great creators, each building upon and transforming what came before. As Teilhard de Chardin envisioned, humanity moves towards an omega point of heightened consciousness and creativity. Inspiration, from the Latin inspirare, to breathe into, suggests the divine breath entering the human. This is what the Greeks understood with their concept of the muse, what Blake called the divine vision, what Einstein referred to when he spoke of cosmic religious feeling. Every creator we'll study had their moments of inspiration, their visions of possibility. But they also showed that inspiration must be paired with perspiration, as Edison famously noted. The divine spark must be tended into a lasting flame. Magic is science not yet understood, wrote Arthur C. Clarke. The greatest creators operate at the edge where the known meets the unknown, where what seems magical becomes real. This is the realm where Newton's gravitational mathematics, Tesla's electrical wizardry, and Jung's psychological alchemy all operate. This magic isn't supernatural. It's supranormal, exceeding our usual boundaries of understanding. It's what Clarke meant when he said the future would be magical to our present eyes. The infinite appears throughout our study, in mathematics, in art, in philosophy. Cantor's different sizes of infinity, Blake's infinity in the palm of your hand, Borges's Library of Babel. Each creator grappled with the infinite in their own way. As Pascal wrote, "Man is but a reed, the most feeble thing in nature, but he is a thinking reed." Through creativity, this thinking reed reaches toward infinity. No creator exists in isolation. Even Newton's shoulders of giants metaphor recognizes the community of minds extending through time. The School of Athens, Leonardo's workshops, Jung's analytical psychology movement, all demonstrate the importance of creative community. This community extends beyond time and space through what Jung called the collective unconscious, what Sheldrake termed morphic resonance, the shared fields of human creativity. Learning is both accumulation of knowledge and transformation of consciousness. As Heraclitus said, no man ever steps in the same river twice, because both the river and the man are changed. True learning, as demonstrated by every creator we'll study, is always transformative. The Delphic maxim, "Know thyself," finds new meaning in studying great creators. We see aspects of ourselves in their struggles, their breakthroughs, their moments of doubt and triumph. Through understanding their creative journeys, we better understand our own. As Hermann Hesse wrote in Demian, each man's life represents a road toward himself. By studying these creators, we illuminate our own path toward creative fulfillment. Welcome, seekers of wisdom and knowledge. To our new viewers, thank you for joining us on this profound journey through the lives and works of history's greatest creators. Your presence here is deeply appreciated. To our returning family, and yes, you are family, thank you for your continued trust and support. Your dedication to exploring these depths of human creativity and consciousness moves me more than words can express. Before we get to the wisdom of Confucius, a brief note. Watching until the end helps our community grow, as it signals to YouTube's algorithm that this content is enjoyed by those seeking deeper understanding. If you find value in these explorations, consider subscribing and joining our discussions in the comments. Your perspectives enrich our collective understanding. For those wishing to support this work more directly, you'll find various ways to contribute in the description below. Every form of support helps us continue creating this content and reaching more minds hungry for wisdom. Now let us begin our journey with Confucius, whose fountain of wisdom continues to enlighten paths of wisdom after 2.5 millennia. The master said, "A transmitter and not a maker, believing in and loving the ancients, I venture to compare myself with our old Pan." The master said, "The silent treasuring up of knowledge, learning without satiety, and instructing others without being wearied. Which one of these things belongs to me?" The master said, "The leaving virtue without proper cultivation, the not thoroughly discussing what is learned, not being able to move towards righteousness of which a knowledge is gained, and not being able to change what is not good. These are the things which occasion me solicitude." These passages from the Analects reveal the core of Confucius's philosophy of creativity. He sees himself not as an original creator, but as a transmitter and lover of ancient wisdom. His creative process involves the silent accumulation of knowledge, tireless learning and teaching, and the continual cultivation of virtue. It is a deeply moral vision of creativity as the perpetuation and refinement of timeless truths. In an age of warring states and moral chaos, a singular voice emerged that would shape the consciousness of billions. Confucius, Confuzi, was born in 551 BCE in the state of Lu, during China's spring and autumn period. His teachings would transcend time and space to become one of humanity's greatest treasures of wisdom. By 3 methods we may learn wisdom: by reflection, which is noblest, by imitation, which is easiest, and by experience, which is the bitterest. These words, preserved in the Analects, reveal the essence of Confucian thought. The Analects themselves are the breathing records of a mind that understood the deepest patterns of human nature and society. Think of them as a mirror reflecting both heaven and earth. Each passage reveals multiple pearls of wisdom. When Confucius spoke of learning, he was describing the art of becoming fully human. What we call Confucianism transcends our modern categories. It's a philosophy, a religion, and what sinologist Herbert Fingaret called the secular as sacred, a complete way of being that unifies the personal, social, and cosmic dimensions of existence. Consider the concept of li, often inadequately translated as ritual or propriety. For Confucius, proper ritual is the embodiment of cosmic harmony in human society. When he emphasized the importance of music, he was referring to the resonance between human culture and universal order. At the heart of Confucian thought lies a revolutionary idea. Moral power exceeds political force. To govern by virtue, he said, is like the North Star, which maintains its place while all the stars turn towards it. This vision of ethical leadership would influence Chinese political thought for millennia. His concept of the rectification of names shows how deeply he understood the relationship between language, thought, and social reality. When names don't match realities, he taught, society itself becomes disordered. This pearl prefigures modern philosophical investigations into language and social construction by over 2,000 years. The harmony Confucius envisioned was like an orchestra where different instruments play their unique parts while contributing to a greater whole. Through the relationships between ruler and subject, father and son, husband and wife, elder and younger siblings, friend and friend, he saw a web of reciprocal duties that bind society together. Yet within this structure, there was always room for individual growth and moral development. For Confucius, education was moral cultivation. Learning without thought is labor lost, he said. Thought without learning is perilous. His approach unified ritual and music, physical discipline and intellectual rigor, creating a system that would shape East Asian education for millennia. Each element developed skill and character and ability and wisdom, and that is rare. The concept of filial piety represents more than just respect for parents. It's the foundation of all virtue in Confucian thought. This reverence for ancestors creates a living connection between past and present, between heaven and earth. Yet it isn't blind obedience. The truly filial child, Confucius taught, respectfully remonstrates with parents when they err. This subtle balance between respect and moral autonomy shows the sophistication of his ethical thinking. The influence of Confucius on Chinese civilization cannot be overstated. The imperial examination system shaped Chinese society for over 1,000 years. The idea of government by moral example rather than force influenced political theory throughout East Asia. Even today, his values shape business practices, family relationships, and educational approaches across the region. The dialogue between Confucianism, Buddhism, and Taoism created one of the world's great philosophical syntheses. Study the past if you would define the future, taught Confucius. His wisdom remains remarkably relevant. His emphasis on moral leadership speaks to modern corporate ethics. His ideas about social harmony offer insights for conflict resolution. His educational philosophy challenges modern standardized approaches. His thoughts on family relationships address contemporary social issues. As we conclude our exploration of this remarkable sage, we see in him a creator who created human societies. His legacy lives on in the daily interactions of billions of people who knowingly or unknowingly live by principles he articulated 2.5 millennia ago. In our age of global challenges and interconnected destinies, this wisdom may be more relevant than ever before. From Confucius's moral harmony to Plato's cosmic order, we see the same pattern, creators recognizing that individual parts must align with a greater whole. While Confucius saw this in human relationships, Plato saw it in the relationship between forms and reality. So let's talk about Plato. But the greatest thing by far is to have a command of metaphor. This alone cannot be imparted by another. It is the mark of genius, for to make good metaphors implies an eye for resemblances. In this passage from Aristotle's Poetics, he recounts Plato's view of metaphor as the supreme poetic gift. For Plato, the ability to recognize and express profound resemblances was the mark of true creative genius. This points to his conception of creativity as a quasi-divine ability to perceive and reveal the hidden connections that underlie reality. From the sun-drenched hills of ancient Athens emerges perhaps the most influential philosopher in Western thought. Plato, student of Socrates, teacher of Aristotle, creates a bridge between heaven and earth through his immortal dialogues. His academy, established in a sacred olive grove, would become the model for all Western universities, a proof to the enduring power of organized inquiry into the nature of reality itself. The theory of forms stands as Plato's most profound contribution to human thought. Imagine a world where every physical object is but a shadow, cast by perfect eternal forms. The chair you sit on is an imperfect reflection of the perfect form of chairness. The beauty you perceive in art or nature points toward the form of beauty itself. This is a radical reimagining of reality that would influence everything from Christian theology to modern mathematics. Consider the allegory of the cave, where prisoners mistake shadows on a wall for reality until one breaks free and discovers the sun when ignorance meets enlightenment, the very basic steps of education, truth, and human potential. The sun in Plato's allegory represents the form of the good, the source of all truth, beauty, and understanding. When he writes of the philosopher king who has seen this sun and returns to guide others, we're witnessing the birth of a new vision of leadership, based on wisdom rather than aimless and dreamless power. Music and mathematics weren't separate disciplines for Plato. They were gateways to understanding the harmony of the cosmos. When he placed over the academy's entrance, "Let no one ignorant of geometry enter here," he was being elitist and acknowledging geometry as the language of the forms themselves. The perfect circles and triangles of geometry exist nowhere in nature, yet their truth is more real than any physical object. When Plato talks about forms, he's actually teaching us transcendence. Every time you recognize beauty, truth, or goodness in the physical world, you're actually remembering something your soul knew before birth. Learning isn't acquisition, it's recollection of the eternal. In myth, Plato found another path to truth. His dialogues are filled with mythological narratives that express truths too profound for logical argument alone. The myth of the story of Atlantis, the tale of the divided souls in the Phaedrus, are vehicles for profound philosophical insights. Through myth, Plato shows us that some truths can only be approached through story and symbol. The concept of the soul in Plato's work transcends simple spirituality. His tripartite model of the soul, reason, spirit, and appetite, offers a sophisticated psychology that prefigures modern understanding of human consciousness. Is it absurd to think that even Jung and Freud inspired themselves from Plato in their theories about the psyche, which is the Greek word for soul, by the way? Psychology is the logos of the soul, the logic of the soul, nothing else. When he compares the soul to a charioteer trying to control two horses, one noble, one base, he's creating a metaphor that talks about the struggle for self-mastery. What makes a just society? Plato's Republic is an exploration of the human soul writ large. His vision of the philosopher king, often misunderstood as advocating tyranny, actually presents a profound challenge. How can wisdom, rather than mere opinion or appetite, guide human affairs? When he banishes poets from his ideal city, he obliges us to consider the relationship between truth and beauty, between education and entertainment. And that is one of the most relevant discussions today, considering who some of our artists are and what they make our children listen to. The Academy was the first university, a laboratory for potential. Within its groves, generations of thinkers wrestled with fundamental questions about reality, knowledge, and justice. The motto "Know thyself" took on new meaning here, where self-knowledge meant understanding one's place in both the visible and invisible worlds. For nearly a millennium, until its closure by Justinian in 529 CE, the Academy stood as a temple of organized intellectual master exhibitions. In the school of Athens, Raphael would later immortalize Plato pointing upward toward the realm of forms, while Aristotle gestures toward the earth. This single image captures the essence of Plato's vision: the connection between the eternal and the temporal, the ideal and the real. We are creatures of both worlds, capable of perceiving eternal truth through our reason while bound to the physical world through our senses. Society, for Plato, was meant to be an expression of cosmic order. His vision of social harmony parallels the harmony he saw in mathematics and music. Each person, like each note in a scale or each number in a sequence, has their proper place in creating the whole. This is the hierarchical and fractal natural expression of different human capacities in service of the common good. The influence of Platonic thought extends far beyond philosophy. When scientists today speak of mathematical beauty in their theories, they're talking without knowing about Plato's belief in the fundamental mathematical structure of reality, just like Pythagoras did a few years behind him. When artists seek to capture ideal beauty, they're engaging with Plato's forms. When educators speak of drawing out innate knowledge, they're referencing his theory of recollection, or at least they should do that. Even in our technological age, Plato's questions remain startlingly relevant. His concerns about the impact of writing on memory and wisdom speak to our modern anxieties about digital technology and artificial intelligence. His exploration of virtual reality and the cave allegory resonates with contemporary discussions about simulated worlds and the nature of consciousness. The depth of Plato's insight into human nature remains unmatched. His understanding of how desire, reason, and spirit interact within the human soul offers a psychological framework that still illuminates our inner conflicts. His analysis of how democracies can degenerate into tyranny through excess of freedom reads like a commentary on current events. Perhaps most importantly, Plato shows us that philosophy isn't just an academic exercise, but a way of life. The pursuit of wisdom demands not just intellectual understanding, but moral transformation. His dialogues don't simply present arguments. They invite us into a process of questioning and discovery that can transform our understanding of ourselves and our world. As we conclude our exploration of this towering figure, we see in Plato a creator who shaped not just Western philosophy, but the very way we think about thinking. Boy thought meta. His quest to understand the relationship between the eternal and the temporal, the ideal and the real, is a fire we seriously need today. Today, as you already know, it's honestly fucked up. Everything is fucked up. But insights into the human soul and the nature of justice as Plato thought about it may be your moment of hope. Because there are solutions. We have known them for millennia. The only question is, are you ready to participate in implementing them? Every time we ask about the relationship between appearance and reality, every time we seek the universal behind the particular, every time we imagine how society could be better than it is, we're walking in Plato's footsteps. His legacy is in the questions he helped us learn to ask. The best teachers teach you how to think for yourself, and Plato did that the best, of all time, uncontested champion of the whole numanosphere. Period. As Alfred North Whitehead famously observed, the entire European philosophical tradition consists of a series of footnotes to Plato. We're still writing those footnotes today. Painting is poetry that is seen rather than felt, and poetry is painting that is felt rather than seen. The Notebooks of Leonardo da Vinci. This quote exemplifies Leonardo's belief in the fundamental unity of all creative endeavors. For him, painting and poetry were not separate arts, but different expressions of the same essential impulse. This reflects his own approach to creativity as a holistic exploration of the boundaries between different modes of expression and knowing. Leonardo da Vinci, the original polymath, the OG Renaissance man. When we talk about seeing differently, this guy literally wrote backwards in his notebooks just because he could. Born out of wedlock, which was a big deal back then, this outsider would become the ultimate insider of human creativity and potential. The Mona Lisa. Everyone knows her smile, but do you know why it haunts us? It's not just technique, though Leonardo did spend years perfecting a method called sfumato that makes the painting look alive. When you understand sfumato, you understand Leonardo's whole philosophy. There are no hard lines in nature. Everything blends into everything else. Reality isn't digital, it's analog, flowing constantly in transition. No, that smile is mysterious because it changes as you look at it, just like reality changes as you observe it. Leonardo understood something quantum physicists would only figure out centuries later. The observer affects the observed. Think about that next time you're staring at your phone screen. They say The Last Supper is a painting, and it is. But I'd say it is also a mathematical symphony. Every single element is precisely calculated to draw your eye to Christ at that exact center, while the apostles' reactions ripple out like waves from a stone dropped in still water. Leonardo deliberately painted it with experimental materials that started deteriorating in his own lifetime. Why? Because he was too busy pushing boundaries to care about permanence. He was living in full holistic creator mode, always testing, always experimenting. Salvator Mundi, the most expensive painting in history. $450 million for a damaged panel showing Christ holding a crystal orb. But look closer at that orb. Any artist of the time would have painted the distortions you see through a glass sphere. Not Leonardo. He painted it without distortion, suggesting either Christ's divine power over optics, or more intriguingly, that it's not glass at all but something far stranger. This is peak Leonardo. Art, science and mystery all in one. His inventions, come on, flying machines, tanks, diving suits, robots. Everyone focuses on whether they would have worked, but that's missing the point entirely. Leonardo was that the future exists in the present moment, in the power of imagination. He was basically saying, look what's possible if you just think differently. And isn't that exactly what we need right now? Let's talk about those notebooks. Thousands of pages of observations, questions, designs, and random thoughts. Today we'd call it a blog, but Leonardo was doing this 500 years before the internet. He was connecting dots nobody else could even see. Anatomy, botany, geology, optics, mathematics. To him, it was all one thing, all connected. The original systems thinker, the original interdisciplinary mind, technology. The man was so far ahead of his time, it's actually ridiculous. While other artists were just trying to mix better paint, Leonardo was dissecting corpses to understand muscle structure, studying birds to understand flight mechanics, and designing war machines that would make modern engineers pause. And he did this all by hand, with no electricity, no internet, no calculator, just pure observation and that incredible mind that never stopped asking, why, why, why? What if this? What is that? What if? His writings are poetry in motion. The way he describes water flowing is like he's writing love letters to nature itself. Water is the driver of nature, he wrote, and man, he saw how everything flows, ideas, time, life itself. When you read his notes about how branches split in mathematical proportions, or how light creates patterns of shadow, you realize this guy was seeing through the world, reality, us to the mathematical poetry underneath. The real legacy of Leonardo is in his way of seeing. He showed us that curiosity isn't just for children, that everything is connected if you look hard enough, that the boundary between art and science is just a figment of our limited imagination. Want to know the secret of creativity? Look at anything, literally anything. The way Leonardo looked at everything, with endless curiosity, without prejudice, ready to be surprised. Here's the real secret of Leonardo's genius. He never stopped being a beginner. Every time he looked at something, he saw it as if for the first time. It's a state of consciousness that transforms the observer into a creator. You know what's wild? We actually have more computing power in our pockets than Leonardo had in his entire workshop. But are we using it to observe, to question, to create, like he did? Or are we just scrolling through feeds, letting others think for us? The tools don't make the master, the mind does. And that's why Leonardo matters more than ever. Think about this, in an age of increasing specialization, when everyone's pushing you to pick a lane and stick to it, Leonardo shows us a different path. He shows us that the most incredible breakthroughs happen when you cross boundaries, when you bring painting to engineering, anatomy to art, mathematics to music. He was interdisciplinary before that was even a word. The great paradox of Leonardo is that the more you study him, the more mysterious he becomes. How could one mind contain so much? How could one life produce such variety? But maybe that's exactly his gift to us, showing us that we're all capable of more than we imagine, that the boundaries we accept are often just the walls of our own mental prison. Here's the thing about Leonardo that most people miss. He was not superhuman. He was the most human of all. Because being human means being curious about everything, trying to understand everything, wanting to create everything. He just had the courage to embrace that fully, to follow every question to its end, to let his mind roam free across the entire landscape of possibility. As we wrap up our exploration of this extraordinary mind, remember, Leonardo's greatest invention wasn't the flying machine or the tank or even the Mona Lisa. It was a new way of being human, curious, fearless, and endlessly creative. In our age of artificial intelligence and virtual reality, we need this reminder more than ever, that true innovation comes from observing nature deeply, questioning everything constantly, and never, ever stopping in our quest to understand and create. That's Leonardo's real message to us across the centuries. The world is infinitely interesting, and our capacity to understand and reshape it is limited only by our curiosity and courage. Not bad for a guy who wrote backwards, right? Want to be like Leonardo? Start looking at everything as if you've never seen it before. Question everything you think you know. Draw what you see, write what you think, and don't let anyone tell you to stick to one field. The next Renaissance might just start with you opening your eyes and mind the way Leonardo did 5 centuries ago. Now that would be a legacy worth painting about. Lord, grant that I may always desire more than I can accomplish. This quote, while not directly sourced, encapsulates Michelangelo's insatiable creative drive. It speaks to his constant striving to surpass his own limits, to reach ever higher in his art. For Michelangelo, creativity was a never-ending process of self-transcendence, always desiring more than one can achieve. Michelangelo, the guy who made marble breathe. When most artists were happy just making beautiful things, this man was trying to liberate soul and angels from stone. I saw the angel in the marble and carved until I set him free. That's not just poetry, that's a whole different level of seeing reality, the creation of Adam. You know the image. It's probably on half the phone cases in the world, but have you ever really looked at it? That space between God's finger and Adam's is the most electric piece of nothing ever painted. And get this, the background behind God? It's the exact shape of a human brain. Michelangelo who dissected corpses to understand anatomy, painted God emerging from a human mind in the 1500s, on a ceiling, while lying on his back. That's the kind of multi-layered genius we're dealing with here. Michelangelo was doing advanced neuroscience. That brain shape behind God was Michelangelo's way of performing a kind of visual alchemy, showing us that the divine mind and human mind are reflections of each other. The final judgment, church officials called it scandalous. Too many naked figures, they said. Michelangelo's response? He painted one of his critics into hell as Minos, judge of the damned, with donkey ears and a snake biting his crotch. And he didn't just paint him anywhere. He put him right above the altar door. Now that's what I call artistic feedback. The Sistine Chapel wasn't just decorated by Michelangelo with a few random stuff to fill the walls. It was transformed by him. It was elevated to eternal life. 4 years on his back, paint dripping in his eyes, neck cramped, arms burning. When someone asked why he put himself through this torture, he said, "The more the marble wastes, the more the statue grows." He was talking about himself. The suffering was part of the creation. The pain was the point. Other paintings, let me tell you something. Michelangelo hated painting. "I am not a painter," he would say. He considered himself a sculptor who got roped into painting by the Pope. Imagine that. The creator of the world's most famous frescoes thought painting was beneath him. But anything he touched turned to gold because he approached everything with that same obsessive intensity. You want to talk about poetry? While most people know him for his art, Michelangelo wrote hundreds of poems that would make modern love songs look like nursery rhymes. The greatest artist does not have any concept which a single piece of marble does not itself contain within its excess, though only a hand that obeys the intellect can discover it. This guy was dropping philosophical bombs between carving masterpieces. The sculptor in him saw everything as something waiting to be revealed. Your life? It's a block of marble. Your potential? It's the angel trapped inside. All it takes is the courage to start chipping away at everything that isn't really you. Easy to say, right? But Michelangelo lived it. He was notorious for his solitude, often sleeping in his clothes, eating barely enough to survive, working for days without rest. Think about how Leonardo and Michelangelo approached the same challenge differently. When Leonardo wanted to understand human anatomy, he dissected bodies and made meticulous drawings. When Michelangelo studied anatomy, he was literally carving his understanding into marble. Same goal, completely different paths. That's what creation looks like in action. This is the beautiful paradox of creation. There are as many paths to mastery as there are masters. Your way of seeing, your way of working, your way of transforming vision into reality, expressions of your unique divine signature. The question isn't which path is right, but which path is yours. His ambition? Legendary. When other artists were content with making pretty pictures for rich patrons, Michelangelo was trying to capture the divine in stone. Look at his David. It's about potential. That's why David looks worried, by the way. He's not celebrating his victory over Goliath. He's contemplating the fight ahead, just like all of us when we face our own giants, our trauma, our final bosses. The endurance this man showed was superhuman. The Sistine Chapel alone would have killed most artists. But for Michelangelo, it was just one project among many. He worked until he was 89 years old. Think about that. In an age when most people died in their 40s, this guy was carving marble and building St. Peter's Basilica well into his 80s. What the fuck? How do you even do that? And the solitude? Oh man. Michelangelo understood something most people never get. Greatness requires isolation. You decide, but the price is paid in the most amount of work hours you can sweat. Not because you're better than others, but because the conversation you need to have is with the work itself. If people knew how hard I worked to achieve my mastery, it wouldn't seem so wonderful at all. In our age of constant connection and instant gratification, that's a message we desperately need to hear. So hear it, taste it, embrace it, have patience with it, and live it. The modern world sells us the myth of constant connection, instant gratification, perpetual distraction. But every creator who's ever touched the divine knows the truth. Greatness requires silence. Depth demands solitude. The masterpiece of your life can only be carved in moments of sacred isolation. However, there's a problem. Here's what's wild about Michelangelo. He was never satisfied. Never thought he was good enough. The same guy who created the Pieta, who painted the Sistine Chapel, who built St. Peter's, died thinking he could have done more. But it's not low self-esteem. That's the mark of someone who saw so far into the possible that everything actual seemed incomplete. Want to know the real lesson of Michelangelo? It's not about being a genius. It's about having the courage to pursue your vision with everything you've got. It's about being willing to lie on your back for 4 years, if that's what the work demands. It's about seeing the angel in the marble of your own life and having the guts to carve until it's free. In our age of quick fixes and instant fame, Michelangelo reminds us that real greatness comes at a price. You want to make something extraordinary? Be prepared to work like a demon, live like a monk, and never ever settle for good enough. No, sir. Because as Michelangelo showed us, the greatest danger isn't aiming too high and missing. It's aiming too low and hitting. Because then you start building your own prison, and you won't even want to acknowledge it. That's the legacy of Il Divino, the Divine One as they called him. Not just the sculptures, the paintings, the buildings, but the example of a life lived in absolute dedication to a vision. In an age of mediocrity and compromise, that's exactly and precisely what we need to remember. So remember. For I believe that a good painter must paint 2 things above all, man and the intentions of his mind. The first is easy, the second difficult, for it must be represented through the gestures and movements of the limbs. This was attributed by Giovanni Paolo Lomazzo in Trattato dell'arte della pittura, Scultura et Architettura, 1584. This quote, attributed to Raphael by a later theorist, speaks to his belief in the expressive power of the human form. For Raphael, the true test of a painter was the ability to convey the inner life of the mind through the outward gestures of the body. This points to his conception of creativity as a process of giving visible form to invisible truths. Raphael was the golden boy of the Renaissance, a rock star of his age, unhinged. When Michelangelo was torturing himself in solitude and Leonardo was writing backwards in his notebooks, Raphael was running the most successful art workshop in Rome, and he made it look easy, too easy. That's why some people sleep on Raphael, big mistake. The School of Athens. Fuck, you want to talk about a flex? This guy painted every major philosopher in history hanging out together like they're at some divine coffee shop. But look closer, he gave them all the faces of his contemporaries. Plato is Leonardo da Vinci, Heraclitus is Michelangelo. Even Raphael himself is in there, looking right at us. A true statement about the timeless conversation between all great minds. St. Michael vanquishing Satan isn't just another pretty religious painting. This is Raphael showing us what spiritual warfare really looks like, and he makes it look elegant as hell. While other artists gave us demons and darkness, Raphael's Michael is just casually stepping on Satan's neck like he's checking his mail. That's power. That's grace. That's Raphael all over. The triumph of religion. More like the triumph of visual storytelling. Each figure, each gesture, each fold of cloth is precisely where it needs to be. No wasted motion, no showing off, just perfect visual harmony. You know how hard that is? It's like writing a symphony where every single note is exactly right, and Raphael did it again and again. What Raphael understood, and what we desperately need to remember, is that perfection means the harmonious integration of all parts, including what we might consider flaws, not flawlessness and perfection. Perfection is the biggest flaw. That's why his figures feel both divine and deeply human. Raphael showed us how the human and divine are the same thing, seen from different angles. His workshops were something else entirely. While Michelangelo was hiding his techniques and Leonardo was writing in code, Raphael was building a creative empire. He trained dozens of artists, managed multiple projects simultaneously, and still found time to innovate. This guy was a creative director centuries before that was even a thing. Architecture? Yeah, he did that too. When he wasn't busy revolutionizing painting, he was appointed chief architect of St. Peter's Basilica. Think about that. The most important church in Christendom, and they handed it to a painter. But Raphael understood something deep about space, about harmony, about how humans interact with their environment. He saw architecture as frozen music, just like Goethe would say centuries later. Here's what's wild about Raphael. He died at 37. 37. Let that sink in. While we're spending decades finding ourselves, Raphael had already found, expressed, and transcended himself. He wasn't racing against time, he was making love with it. That's what mastery looks like. In less time than most people take to figure out their life, this man changed the course of art history. And he did it without the tortured genius act. No drama, no angst, just pure, focused creativity. The real magic of Raphael was the combination of technical skill with his ability to make the divine look natural and the natural look divine. When he painted the human form, he was showing us what we could be. Perfect proportion, perfect harmony, perfect grace. Not as an impossible ideal, but as something just within reach. You want to know why they called this period the High Renaissance? Look at Raphael's work. This is what happens when human potential meets perfect execution. While everyone else was still trying to figure out how to make religious art look realistic, Raphael was making realistic art look religious. But don't get it twisted. There was a great depth behind the pretty boy face of Raphael. Every stroke, every composition, every choice was backed by deep understanding. He studied everything: philosophy, religion, anatomy, perspective, ancient art, contemporary innovations. He just made it look effortless. That's true mastery. Today we're all about the tortured artist, the rebel, the outsider. But Raphael shows us another way. Excellence without ego, innovation without drama, mastery without misery. In a world that often confuses suffering with authenticity, maybe that's exactly what we need to remember. Want to understand Raphael's legacy? Look at how he died, with his last painting, the Transfiguration, still unfinished in his studio. The whole city of Rome shut down for his funeral. The Pope himself kissed his hand before they closed the coffin. Why? Because they knew they'd never see his like again. The perfect balance of talent, vision, and execution. That's the thing about Raphael. He showed us what's possible when natural genius meets relentless refinement. No shortcuts, no excuses, no settling for good enough. Just pure, focused dedication to getting it exactly right. In our age of quick takes and hot reactions, that kind of patience, that kind of precision might just be revolutionary all over again. And maybe that's Raphael's real message to us across the centuries. Greatness doesn't have to be painful. Excellence doesn't have to be tortured. Sometimes the highest art looks like natural grace. But make no mistake, behind that grace is knowledge. Behind that harmony is understanding. Behind that ease is mastery. This is the secret that every true master knows. What looks like effortless grace is actually the fruit of relentless dedication. But the real mastery is making it look inevitable, as if nature itself couldn't have arranged it any other way, and making it look easy, meanwhile. Oh, for a muse of fire that would ascend, the brightest heaven of invention, a kingdom for a stage, princes to act and monarchs to behold the swelling scene. In this opening invocation from Henry V, the chorus calls upon the muse of fire to inspire a work of such imaginative power that it can transform the humble stage into a kingdom, actors into princes, and the audience into awestruck monarchs. It's a potent encapsulation of Shakespeare's own transformative creative power, his ability to conjure entire worlds from the raw material of language. Shakespeare, the immortal bard, the guy who basically created the version we're speaking right now. Think that's an exaggeration? Here's a fun fact. This dude invented over 1,700 common words we use today. Assassination, swagger, lonely, yeah, all Shakespeare. He wrote plays and rewrote how humans talk about being human. Every word Shakespeare invented was a new way to think, to feel, to be. When you change language, you change the operating system of consciousness itself. That's why his impact goes way beyond literature. He literally upgraded our OS. You want to talk about influence? Shakespeare wrote 37 plays and 154 sonnets that have been translated into every major language on earth. Even people who've never read Shakespeare are quoting Shakespeare. To be or not to be become shorthand for the entire human condition. How crazy is that? Hamlet is a psychological thriller that dives so deep into the human mind, it makes modern psychological thrillers look like kids' stuff. Macbeth is about how power corrupts and how guilt can literally drive you insane. And King Lear, that's about family dysfunction and aging, and madness on a scale that makes modern family dramas look like sitcoms. His comedies, though, that's where Shakespeare really flexes. You think romantic comedies are a modern invention? Shakespeare was writing rom-coms that still hit harder than anything Hollywood's putting out. Much Ado About Nothing is basically every witty romance ever written, just done better. A Midsummer Night's Dream. That's like a supernatural romantic comedy that makes Twilight look like amateur hour. The histories? This is where it gets wild. Shakespeare was exploring power, politics, and human nature in ways that are scarily relevant today. Richard III is like House of Cards, but with better dialogue. Henry V is about leadership and warfare that military academies still study. Julius Caesar? That's about politics and betrayal that could have happened yesterday. The sonnets? Man. In just 14 lines each, Shakespeare captures every possible shade of love, jealousy, fear, and desire. Sonnet 18. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Is art's power to make mortals immortal? The whole sequence is like a masterclass in human emotion packed into perfect little packages. But here's what's really insane about Shakespeare. We're not even sure if we have his actual words. The plays we read today are compiled from different sources, some reliable, some not. And you know what? It doesn't matter. The power of these works is so strong it survives bad translations, modern adaptations, and high school English classes. Want to know why Shakespeare endures? Because he understood something fundamental about being human. All our petty jealousies, our grand ambitions, our desperate loves, our ridiculous mistakes. He saw it all and put it on stage in a way that makes us recognize ourselves. That's not just art, that's alchemy. And the language? Shakespeare bent words to his will. When existing words weren't enough, he made new ones. When normal phrases couldn't capture what he wanted to say, he created metaphors that became part of how we think. All the world's a stage. That's a whole new way of seeing reality. Look at how he builds characters. Hamlet is experiencing existential dread that Kierkegaard would later write philosophy books about. Lady Macbeth is showing us how guilt can shatter a psyche in ways Freud would later theorize. Falstaff is showing us how humor can be a weapon, a shield and a wound all at once. Here's what most people miss about Shakespeare. He was writing for everyone. Groundlings in the pit, nobles in the boxes, everyone got something. That's why his plays work as both high art and popular entertainment. Try doing that sometime. It's like trying to write a song that works as both a symphony and a pop hit. The real magic of Shakespeare is in what he shows us about creativity itself. This guy took existing stories, historical chronicles, and common legends and transformed them into something entirely new. He showed us that originality isn't about inventing new stories. It's about telling eternal stories in ways that make them feel like they were written just for us, just for now. That's why every generation finds its own Shakespeare. Every culture that translates him finds their own resonances. He's been adapted into every possible setting because his insights into human nature are universal. That's transcendental talent. Want to understand Shakespeare's true legacy? Look at how he made the personal universal and the universal personal. Look at how he showed us that the highest art can speak to everyone. Look at how he proved that entertainment doesn't have to be shallow and depth doesn't have to be boring. In an age where we're all trying to find our voice, Shakespeare shows us that true originality comes from digging deeper into what makes us human, not from trying to be different. In an age of specialization, he shows us that you can be profound and popular at the same time. In an age of hot takes and quick reactions, he shows us that true insight comes from seeing all sides of human nature. The tragic and the comic, the noble and the low, the sublime and the ridiculous. That's Shakespeare's real message across the centuries. The whole world is indeed a stage, and understanding how to play our part. That's the key to being fully human. Not bad for a guy from Stratford who never went to university, right? I do not know what I may appear to the world, but to myself I seem to have been only like a boy playing on the seashore, and diverting myself in now and then finding a smoother pebble or a prettier shell than ordinary, whilst the great ocean of truth lay all undiscovered before me. From Brewster's Memoirs of Newton, Volume 2, Chapter 27. In this famous reflection, Newton expresses his sense of humility and wonder before the vast ocean of truth that remains to be discovered. It's a striking image of the creative process as a playful, open-ended exploration where even the greatest discoveries are but pretty shells on the shore of an infinite sea. It speaks to Newton's profound sense of the boundlessness and beauty of the universe. Newton, the guy who literally wrote the laws of the universe. When an apple fell on his head, most people would have just eaten it. Newton? He invented calculus to figure out why it fell. That's a different level of thinking right there. Think about what this really means. While everyone else was experiencing reality passively, Newton was diving into the mathematical code behind it. Just like Neo in the Matrix, he pierced through the surface and the mundane, and he was seeing the underlying patterns that govern everything. And once you see those patterns, you can't unsee them. That's what real revelation feels like. Let's talk about universal gravitation. Newton showed that the same force making an apple drop is keeping the moon in orbit and the planets around the sun. Think about how insane that is. He unified heaven and earth with mathematics. Before Newton, people thought celestial bodies followed different rules than earthly ones. After Newton, everything in the universe plays by the same rules. Mind-blowing. When Newton couldn't find the math to explain motion and change, he didn't give up. He invented a whole new branch of mathematics, and he kept it secret for years, using it like a private tool for understanding the universe. Leibniz had to reinvent it independently. Newton figured out that white light contains all colors by sticking a prism through a hole in his window shutters. While everyone else was arguing about theories, Newton was literally catching rainbows in his room. He even stuck a needle in his own eye socket to understand how vision works. Don't try this at home, kids. Newton was built differently. The binomial theorem, he developed that while he was still a student. The reflecting telescope, built it himself because existing telescopes weren't good enough. Scientific method, Newton basically wrote the blueprint for how we do science today. Hypotheses non fingo. I don't make guesses, he said. Show me the math, show me the evidence, or get out of my face. But here's what's wild about Newton. While he was revolutionizing the science of the physical universe, he was also deep into alchemy and biblical prophecy. Half his writings are about trying to decode hidden messages in the Bible and turn lead into gold. And you know what? Maybe that's what made him special. He could see connections nobody else could see. The famous quote about standing on the shoulders of giants, that was actually a dig at his rival Robert Hooke, who was really short. Newton could be petty as hell. He got into so many feuds that his friend had to handle his correspondence because he couldn't play nice with other scientists. Sometimes genius comes with a side of spite. Want to know how dedicated this guy was? During the Great Plague, when Cambridge shut down, Newton retreated to his family farm and had what historians call his miracle year. In basically one sitting, he developed the foundations of calculus, optics, and motion. While everyone else was freaking out about the plague, Newton was casually refining his revolutionary and fiery self. The real legacy of Newton is again in how he changed what we think is possible. Before Newton, the world was mysterious and magical. After Newton, we had rules, laws, and predictability. He showed us that the universe is mathematical rather than arbitrary. That's a whole new way of seeing reality. You want to know why they called it the Enlightenment? Because Newton literally brought light to darkness. He showed us that with mathematics and careful observation, we can understand anything. No more mystery, no more superstition, just clean, clear, mathematical truth. In our age of quantum uncertainty and chaos theory, some people think Newton's clockwork universe is outdated. But make no mistake, if you're reading this on a phone, if you've ever been in an airplane, if you've ever used GPS, you're living in Newton's world. The laws he discovered are what got us to the moon and what's keeping your satellites in orbit. That's Newton's real message across the centuries. The universe is beautiful, but is also understandable. And if you're willing to do the work, to think deeply enough, to observe carefully enough, You can understand it too. Not bad for a farm boy who got kicked in the head by a horse as a kid, right? Want to be like Newton? Stop accepting what you're told. Look deeper. Ask the hard questions. And when the existing tools aren't good enough to find your answers, make new ones. Because as Newton showed us, the only limit to our understanding is our willingness to push beyond what we think is possible. The Godhead is effective in the living and not in the dead, in the becoming and the changing, not in the become and the set fast. And therefore, similarly, the reason is concerned only to strive towards the divine through the becoming and the living, and the understanding only to make use of the become and the set fast. Conversations with Eckermann, 1829. In this dense and profound passage, Goethe articulates his dynamic, evolutionary vision of creativity. For him, the divine creative principle is active in the realm of becoming, not in static being. Reason, therefore, must strive towards this living principle, while understanding makes use of fixed forms. This dialectic between the fluid and the fixed, the evolving and the established, lies at the heart of Goethe's conception of the creative process. Goethe was the universal genius who refused to choose between art and science. When most writers were content to just write, this guy was doing groundbreaking work in botany, anatomy, and color theory. Think Renaissance man in the age of specialization. That's Goethe. Faust. This needs no introduction or adjectives. It has its own league. You want to talk about ambition? Faust is the story of human striving itself. A guy literally makes a deal with the devil not for wealth or power, but for the ultimate experience of life. And Goethe spent 60 years writing it. 6 decades. That's what you call obsession with perfection. His scientific work, this is where it gets wild. While Newton was splitting light into colors with a prism, Goethe was saying, hold up. That's not the whole story. His theory of colors is about how we actually experience color. Modern neuroscience is still catching up to what Goethe understood about perception and consciousness. His poetry? Man. Before Goethe, German literature was basically a backwater. After him, it became one of the most powerful literary traditions in the world. The sorrows of young Goethe launched the Romantic movement and caused a wave of copycat suicides across Europe. He changed how an entire generation felt about love and death. Let's talk about his scientific mind. While everyone was trying to categorize plants into neat little boxes, Goethe discovered the intermaxillary bone in humans and developed the concept of plant metamorphosis. He saw connections nobody else could see. To him, nature was a living poem to be read and understood. His novels? Wilhelm Meister's apprenticeship basically invented the Bildungsroman, the coming-of-age story. Every character development story you've ever read? You can thank Goethe for that. He showed us that growing up is about how you transform yourself, not what happens to you. Goethe was both a romantic and a classical thinker. He could write passionate poetry that would make people weep, then turn around and do precise scientific observations that would make Newton proud. Most people thought you had to choose between heart and head. Goethe, he said, why not both? When we fragment knowledge, we fragment consciousness. Every specialist who refuses to look beyond their field is unconsciously participating in the dismemberment of human understanding. Goethe saw this coming. He knew that the future belongs to those who can reintegrate what modernity has torn apart. The concept of world literature, Weltliteratur? Yeah, Goethe came up with that too. He saw that literature was more than national, it was human. He read Persian poetry, Chinese novels, and Sanskrit drama. In an age of nationalism, he was thinking globally. Sound familiar? My man was basically predicting cultural globalization 2 centuries early. Want to know what really made Goethe different? He lived what he wrote. When he wrote about nature, he was out there studying plants. When he wrote about love, he was out there falling in love over and over again. When he wrote about human striving and Faust, he was pushing himself to master every field he could. That's why his work feels so real, because it was real. His influence? It's almost easier to list who he didn't influence. Philosophers from Hegel to Nietzsche built on his ideas. Scientists still debate his color theory. Writers from Thomas Mann to Hermann Hesse saw him as the ultimate model of what a writer could be. Even Jung's concept of the self owes something to Goethe's idea of personal development. But here's the key fact about Goethe. He never stopped growing. At 82, he finished Faust Part 2, which is so complex that people are still arguing about what it means. This guy was constantly becoming. As he said, die and become. That was his life philosophy. Want to understand Goethe's true legacy? Look at how he refused to accept the artificial boundaries between art and science, between feeling and thinking, between the personal and the universal. In our age of hyper-specialization, when everyone's pushed to be one thing, Goethe shows us another way. Be everything you can be. That's Goethe's real message across the centuries. Life is about synthesizing different paths into something greater, not picking one. Your emotions can inform your science. Your science can enrich your art. Your personal experiences can reveal universal truths. Want to be like Goethe? Stop fragmenting your interests. Stop choosing between heart and head. Start seeing the connections between everything. Because as Goethe showed us, the richest life isn't lived in the specialist's corner. It's lived in the glorious wholeness of all human experience. And that's a lesson we desperately need today, too. I say unto you, one must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star. I say unto you, you still have chaos in yourselves. Alas, the time is coming when man will no longer give birth to a star. Alas, the time of the most despicable man is coming, he that is no longer able to despise himself. Behold, I show you the last man. Thus spoke Zarathustra, Prologue, Section 5. In this prophetic passage, Zarathustra proclaims that the chaos within oneself is the necessary condition for creative birth. The dancing star born from this chaos is a symbol of joyful, life-affirming creation. Zarathustra warns, however, of the coming of the last man, the man who is no longer capable of this creative self-overcoming. This passage encapsulates Nietzsche's view of creativity as a heroic act of self-transformation, a triumph over the forces of stagnation and nihilism. Nietzsche, the philosopher who took a sledgehammer to the foundations of Western civilization. When most philosophers were writing polite essays about ethics, this madman was declaring that God is dead and we have killed him. That's psychological dynamite. Thus spoke Zarathustra is a prophecy in the form of poetry. Imagine writing something so powerful that Hitler and the hippies both claimed it as their Bible, both completely misunderstood it, by the way. When Zarathustra comes down from his mountain to teach humanity about the Übermensch, he's not talking about some master race. He's talking about the potential in every human to overcome themselves, the will to power. Everyone thinks it's about dominating others. Big mistake. Nietzsche was talking about something way deeper. The creative force that makes artists paint, scientists discover, and humans push beyond their limitations. It's about mastering yourself. When he said, "Become who you are," he was handing us a task that could take a lifetime. Amor fati, the love of fate. This is where Nietzsche really flexes. While everyone else was complaining about life's hardships, he's saying not just accept your fate, love it, every single part of it, the pain, the struggle, the setbacks. Say yes to all of it. Would you live your life again exactly the same way for eternity? That's his famous eternal recurrence thought experiment. And if your answer is no, he'd say you're not living right. That's the most radical act of creation possible, to take your life, with all its pain and disappointment, and turn it into something you choose eternally. That's not acceptance, but alchemical transcendence. His take on good and evil, that's where things get really spicy. Nietzsche said our whole moral system is based on resentment, the revenge of the weak against the strong. When he wrote Beyond Good and Evil, he wasn't trying to be edgy, or maybe he was, but more importantly, he was trying to show us that our deepest moral convictions might just be psychological defense mechanisms. Mind-blowing stuff that Freud would later run with. Think about what Nietzsche really said. In a universe without given meaning, the act of creation becomes sacred. Every time you choose to create meaning, instead of just consuming it, you're participating in the evolution of consciousness itself. That's not philosophy. That's spiritual alchemy in action. Master and slave morality. This is more than your half-baked historical analysis, or even worse, today's media. Nietzsche's saying there are two ways of looking at the world, through the eyes of the creator or the eyes of the critic. The master says this is good and defines bad as whatever isn't that. The slave says they are evil and defines good as whatever they're not. See the difference? One creates values, the other reacts. Which one are you? Nietzsche saw our modern crisis of meaning coming a century away. God is dead was the opposite of a celebration. It was a diagnosis. The downfall of the roller coaster leaving from Holy Land at 300 kilometers per hour, expecting to hit the mud in a few hundreds of years. Will it be fatal? Nietzsche understood that once we stopped believing in absolute values, we'd have to create our own meaning or fall into nihilism. Look around, does that sound familiar? The devil in Nietzsche's work is definitely not a horned beast. It's the spirit of gravity, everything that pulls us down into mediocrity and conformity. And God? The real death of God has left churches. It's in shopping malls and social media feeds. In all the little ways we've replaced the search for meaning with the pursuit of comfort. Want to know what made Nietzsche different? While other philosophers were trying to build systems, he was trying to wake us up. His writing style is like philosophical dynamite, designed to blow up your certainties and force you to think for yourself. That's why he wrote in aphorisms and parables. He didn't want to give you answers. He wanted to force you to find your own. But here's the real tragedy of Nietzsche. Most people completely misunderstand him. They think he's all about destruction and nihilism. Nothing could be further from the truth. Everything he tore down to make space for something greater, the death of God. That's the precondition for human beings to finally take responsibility for creating meaning. The Übermensch is not interested in politics. That's just a consequence of his overflowing will, a battle for each of us to overcome ourselves. When Nietzsche talks about self-overcoming as the hardest thing possible, becoming who you truly are in a world that wants you to be like everyone else. That's why his work hits even harder today than it did in his own time. In an age of mass media, social conformity, and manufactured consent, Nietzsche's call to think for yourself, create your own values, and have the courage to be different is the key to your freedom. Want to understand Nietzsche's real message? It's not about being edgy or rebellious. It's about the immense task of creating meaning in a meaningless universe. It's about having the courage to question everything you believe and still say yes to life. It's about dancing on the edge of the abyss and loving every second of it. That's Nietzsche's eternal message. The death of God is an opportunity. An opportunity to become artists of our own lives, to create values instead of just inheriting them, to transform it was into thus I willed it. Not bad for a sickly professor who went mad, right? Want to be like Nietzsche? Start questioning everything, especially the things you think you know for certain. Have the courage to think dangerous thoughts, but most importantly, learn to say yes to life in all its terror and beauty. Because as Nietzsche showed us, the real task is creating meaning. When natural inclination develops into a passionate desire, one advances towards his goal in 7-league boots. In realizing big things, there should be no obstacle too great to overcome. That was my creed, and I have always lived up to it. You can get anything you want provided you want it enough. If there is something you want more than anything and you center your mind upon it, you generate a mental force that will realize that very thing. The World Today, 1912, Volume 21. This quote powerfully expresses Tesla's unshakable faith in the creative power of desire and will. For Tesla, passionate commitment to a goal was the supreme creative force, capable of overcoming any obstacle. This points to his conception of creativity as a form of mental energetics, where the concentrated force of desire can actualize even the most ambitious visions. Tesla was the true wizard of electricity. He was our lab Zeus, a mind of an unmatched notoriety, the man who lit up the world and died in love with a pigeon. When Edison was still trying to push DC power, Tesla was dreaming up the entire modern electrical grid. The man saw the whole goddamn future. The legendary inventor Nikola Tesla once declared, "If you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration." Tesla's groundbreaking work on alternating current electricity and wireless power transmission was rooted in his belief that by understanding the fundamental vibrational nature of reality, we could unlock limitless potential for innovation and discovery. Alternating current? Everyone thought electricity had to flow in one direction. Tesla looked at nature, at the waves, at vibrations, at fucking cosmic energy, and said, nah, let's make it pulse. AC power was a complete reimagining of how energy could work. And guess what? Every time you plug something into a wall, you're using Tesla's vision. His inventions are absolutely wild. Radio control. He demonstrated it in 1898 and everybody thought it was magic or mind control. Wireless power transmission? He built a giant tower to try and give the whole world free electricity. They shut him down. Of course they did. Can't make money off of free energy, right? The Tesla coil? This thing shoots lightning bolts. While other inventors were making practical stuff, Tesla was literally playing with lightning. But here's what most people miss. He understood something fundamental about the nature of electricity and resonance that we're still trying to figure out today. You know what's insane about Tesla? While everyone else was thinking about electricity as something to be contained in wires, he saw it as the fundamental force of the universe. He talked about harnessing the energy between planets, about machines that could read thoughts, about vibrations that could split the earth. And the craziest part, some of his crazy ideas are starting to look not so crazy anymore. His mind worked differently. He could visualize his inventions completely in his head, run them for weeks, and spot the wear and tear before building anything. That's some next-level consciousness right there. He claimed he could tune into frequencies of the cosmos itself. In our age of quantum physics and unified field theories, maybe he was onto something. The rivalry with Edison. Oh man. While Edison was slogging through thousands of experiments, Tesla was having visions of rotating magnetic fields in the sunset. Edison promised Tesla $50,000 to improve his DC generators. When Tesla did it, Edison said, "You don't understand American humor," and offered him a $10 raise instead. Lesson learned. Wizards don't do well with bean counters. Want to know why Tesla died broke in a hotel room? Because he was too busy inventing the future to patent it properly. While other inventors were building empires, Tesla was giving away his best ideas in lectures. He thought knowledge should be free. Sound familiar? He was basically open source before computers existed. Think about that paradox. The man who understood electricity better than anyone was anti-patent, anti-ownership. He saw energy the way we now see information. It wants to be free. His later years got weird, really weird. He became obsessed with pigeons, spoke about death rays and thought photography, claimed he was receiving signals from Mars. But here's the thing. Every time we write off one of Tesla's crazy ideas, 20 years later, someone proves he was right about something fundamental. The real tragedy of Tesla isn't that he died poor. It's that we're still catching up to what he understood about energy, resonance, and the nature of reality at its basis. We're still using his patents to build new technology. We're still trying to figure out what he meant by some of his more obscure writings. Tesla invented new machines, but also changed humanity's relationship with energy itself. Free energy for everyone, wireless power transmission, machines in harmony with nature's frequencies. Sound like any modern movements, you know? Every clean energy activist, every open source developer, every advocate for universal basic access to resources is carrying a piece of Tesla's dream. The future he imagined is necessary. That's Tesla's real message across time. Technology doesn't have to dominate nature, it can work in harmony with it. Energy doesn't have to be something we fight over, it could be as free as the air we breathe. Not bad for a guy who spent his last years feeding pigeons in Central Park, right? The real tragedy isn't just that we ignored Tesla, it's that we're still making the same mistake. Every time someone comes along with a vision too big for the market to digest, we do what we did to Tesla. We choose the profitable over the revolutionary. But here's the thing about revolutionary ideas, they don't go away. They wait, like seeds waiting for the right season, like code waiting for the right hardware, like truth waiting for minds ready to comprehend it. Revolutionary ideas have infinite patience because they're aligned with the direction of evolution. Think about it. What Tesla understood was the evolutionary direction of human consciousness. Every time we choose open source over closed systems, collaboration over competition, universal access over artificial scarcity, we're not just making technological choices, we're choosing what kind of species we want to become. The real tragedy is we don't have more Teslas. The real tragedy is we don't appreciate them. The real tragedy is that most patrons see them as milk cows. That needs to change. The French philosopher Pierre Teilhard de Chardin envisioned a future where humanity would evolve towards what he called the Omega point, a supreme point of convergence where consciousness would reach its maximum complexity and unification. Teilhard saw this telos as the driving force behind cosmic evolution, pulling the universe towards ever greater degrees of interiorization and self-reflection. While his ideas remain speculative, they offer a compelling vision of a universe awakening to itself through the vehicle of human consciousness. Want to be like Tesla? Stop thinking inside the boxes others have built. Look at the world's fundamental patterns, in nature, in energy, in the cosmos itself. And most importantly, don't be afraid to be called crazy. Because as Tesla showed us, today's madman is often tomorrow's prophet, and the prophet teaches us the future. The most beautiful experience we can have is the mysterious. It is the fundamental emotion that stands at the cradle of true art and true science. Whoever does not know it and can no longer wonder, no longer marvel, is as good as dead, and his eyes are dimmed. It was the experience of mystery, even if mixed with fear, that engendered religion. A knowledge of the existence of something we cannot penetrate, our perceptions of the profoundest reason and the most radiant beauty, which only in their most primitive forms are accessible to our minds. It is this knowledge and this emotion that constitute true religiosity. In this sense, and only this sense, I am a deeply religious man. The world as I see it. In this moving passage, Einstein identifies the experience of mystery as the common wellspring of both art and science. For him, the ability to wonder, to marvel at the impenetrable, is the mark of true vitality and the source of all genuine creativity. He links this sense of mystery to a feeling of religiosity, a profound awareness of a beauty and reason that transcend our understanding. This passage brilliantly captures Einstein's deeply spiritual conception of the creative impulse as a response to the sublime mystery of existence. Einstein. This brother completely rewrote the rules of the universe. When Newton's physics wasn't enough to explain reality, Einstein reimagined space and time. That's not thinking outside the box, that's realizing there is no box. E equals mc squared, the most famous equation in history. 3 symbols that changed everything. Want to know what's really mind-blowing about it? It shows that matter and energy are the same thing. That chunk of matter you're sitting on, that's just really tightly packed energy. The light hitting your eyes, that's energy that could become matter. Einstein saw it in his mind before anyone could prove it. The theory of relativity. Everyone thinks this means everything is relative. That's not the case. It's actually about what doesn't change. The speed of light, the laws of physics. Einstein showed us that time itself bends and stretches to keep these constants constant. Think that's weird? Welcome to Einstein's universe, where the faster you go, the slower time moves, and gravity isn't a force. It's the curvature of space-time. Albert Einstein, in a letter to a grieving father, wrote that people like us who believe in physics know that the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. This mind-bending idea suggests that our everyday experience of time as a linear progression is but a construction of our limited perception. From the perspective of physics, all moments may coexist in an eternal now, challenging us to rethink the very nature of existence. Einstein showed us something fundamental about the nature of revelation. Sometimes the deepest truths don't come from looking for what changes, but from finding what remains constant even when everything else transforms. He gifted us a manual for discovering your own unchanging essence. Think about this. Einstein proved that time isn't what we think it is. It's not this constant river flowing from past to future. It's more like a landscape, and how you move through it changes how you experience it. When he said the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion, that's hardcore physics, baby, the photoelectric effect. This is where Einstein really shows his genius. While everyone was arguing about whether light was a wave or a particle, Einstein said, why not both? Light acts like a wave when we measure it as a wave, and like particles when we measure it as particles. Quantum physics was born right there, and it's weirder than any science fiction you've ever read. His famous debates with Niels Bohr about quantum mechanics. God does not play dice with the universe, Einstein said. He couldn't accept that reality at its smallest level is fundamentally uncertain. Turns out he was wrong about that, but his questions helped make quantum theory stronger. Even Einstein's mistakes pushed science forward. You want to talk about influence? Every time you use GPS, you're using Einstein's theories. Those satellites have to account for both special and general relativity because time moves differently up there than it does down here. Your phone is literally compensating for the warping of space-time just to tell you where you are. Many people don't know this, but Einstein was also a philosopher. When he said imagination is more important than knowledge, he was telling us something fundamental about how breakthrough thinking happens. His famous thought experiments, riding on a beam of light, elevators in free fall, are poetry with mathematical precision. And the unified field theory, the thing that consumed the last 30 years of his life, he never solved it. But that quest to find the ultimate unity in nature's laws was still on it. String theory, quantum gravity, all of these are attempts to finish what Einstein started. The real revolution of Einstein is about how we think about thinking. He showed us that common sense is just what we're used to, not what's true. The universe is stranger and more beautiful than our everyday experience suggests. Goethe famously declared, as long as you haven't experienced this, to die and so to grow, you are only a troubled guest on the dark earth. The transformative power of surrendering our limited ego identity and embracing the cycles of change, loss, and renewal inherent in nature. Goethe's vision of human creativity was one rooted in a deep attunement to the rhythms of the natural world. And yet Einstein wasn't some cold, calculating machine. He played violin, he sailed, he had a wicked sense of humor. When asked how to think like him, he said taking breaks. Even his famous messy hair was a deliberate choice. He didn't want to waste time on appearances when he could be thinking about the cosmos. That's Einstein's real message across time. The universe is comprehensible, but not in the way we expect. Reality is more amazing than our prejudices allow. And most importantly, wonder is the source of all true science. Want to be like Einstein? Start questioning your most basic assumptions. Look at the same things everyone else is looking at, but see something different. And never ever lose that childlike sense of wonder about the universe. Because as Einstein showed us, the most important scientific equipment isn't a telescope or a particle accelerator. It's an open mind combined with ruthless logical rigor. The artist is not a person endowed with free will who seeks his own ends, but one who allows art to realize its purposes through him. As a human being, he may have moods and a will and personal aims, but as an artist, he is man in a higher sense. He is collective man, a vehicle and molder of the unconscious psychic life of mankind. Not only the artist's work, but his personal life, his moods, his experiences, and his whole fate are inextricably interwoven with the specific historical conditions of his time and with the general character of the epoch in which he lives. Psychology and Literature, 1930. In this passage, Jung presents a profound and challenging view of the artist as a vessel for the collective unconscious. The artist in this view is not a fully autonomous individual, but a conduit for the deeper psychic currents of their time. Their work and their very life are shaped by historical forces beyond their personal control or understanding. This points to Jung's conception of creativity as a process of channeling and giving form to the archetypal energies that move through both the individual and the collective psyche. Jung, the explorer of the psyche's darkest depths. While Freud was obsessing about sex and childhood trauma, Jung was diving into ancient myths, alchemy, and the collective dreams of humanity. Jung's psychology really looks like soul archaeology, as he observed, who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. This process of inner exploration, of confronting the hidden depths of our own psyche, is the key to unlocking our latent creative potential. Jung's concept of individuation, the lifelong journey towards wholeness and self-realization, is a powerful framework for understanding the transformative power of engaging with our unconscious minds. The collective unconscious, Jung said, we're not born with blank slate minds. We inherit a whole universe of ancient symbols and patterns. Those dragons in your dreams, those heroes in your favorite stories, they're not random. They're archetypes, universal patterns that live in every human psyche. And they're as real as your bones. Synchronicity, Jung's idea that the universe creates meaningful coincidences. Not just random chance, but moments when the outer world mirrors your inner state so perfectly, it takes your breath away. He developed this theory while working with Einstein, by the way. While Einstein was unifying space and time, Jung was unifying mind and matter. In the words of quantum physicist Werner Heisenberg, the first gulp from the glass of natural sciences will turn you into an atheist, but at the bottom of the glass, God is waiting for you. This provocative statement suggests that the deeper we delve into the fundamental nature of reality, the more we encounter profound questions about the role of consciousness, meaning, and purpose in the universe. Individuation? Now we're getting to the real stuff. Most people think self-development is about fixing what's wrong with you. Jung said, nah, it's about becoming who you already are. The shadow, the animus, the wise old man-woman, are parts of you waiting to be discovered, integrated, made whole. Think about his work with alchemy. Everyone thought those old texts about turning lead into gold were just failed chemistry. Jung looked deeper and saw something mind-blowing. They were actually writing about psychological transformation in chemical metaphors. The philosopher's stone isn't about making gold, it's about making yourself whole. That's next-level pattern recognition right there. His understanding of the shadow? While everyone else was trying to be good, Jung was saying you need to face your darkness, not just acknowledge it, integrate it, because the more you deny your shadow, the more it controls you. Look at any person or movement claiming pure goodness. That's where you'll find the darkest shadow. How's that for relevant today? Archetypes are living psychic forces. The mother, the hero, the trickster, the wise old man. They are fundamental patterns of the human psyche that dictate how we perceive reality. And they have their own agendas. Think you're fully in control of your psyche? Jung would laugh. His take on religion, next level. Instead of dismissing it like Freud, or taking it literally like fundamentalists, Jung saw religious symbols as expressions of deep psychic realities. That snake in the Garden of Eden? That's about the emergence of consciousness, the Holy Grail. That's about the quest for wholeness. He showed us how the human psyche naturally creates meaning. Here's the thing about Jung and dreams. He lived them. The Red Book, that's Jung's own descent into his unconscious. He spent 16 years filling it with paintings and visions that would make most people think he'd lost his mind. But he went there deliberately, brought back the treasure, and changed psychology forever. His view on consciousness, it's just the tip of the iceberg. The real action is happening in the unconscious. And not just your personal unconscious. We're all connected to this vast ocean of collective human experience. Those weird feelings you get in ancient places, those inexplicable fears, that's the collective unconscious constellation. The same way astronomers map the stars, Jung mapped the constellations of the psyche. He showed us that there are patterns in the soul as regular as the movements of planets. And once you start seeing these patterns, your inner world becomes as vast and navigable as outer space. Jung was mapping the architecture of potential. Those archetypal patterns are the source code of consciousness. And once you start recognizing them, you can't unsee them. Every story, every dream, every human interaction becomes a window into the infinite. Modern psychology sees only brain chemistry and behavior patterns. Jung would say that's like studying the hardware while ignoring the software and the programmer. The psyche is responding to life, and it's also actively trying to create meaning, to make you whole. Those anxiety attacks, those recurring dreams, they're not problems to fix. They're messages to decode. Jung's work today is mind-blowing because it explains so much about our current world. Why do we binge on superhero movies? Archetypes. Why do people fall for cult leaders? Shadow projection. Why are we all addicted to our phones? We're starving for symbolic meaning in a too literal world. The real gift of Jung is understanding the psyche and how to live with it. He taught us that symptoms are attempts at solutions. Your depression might be your psyche forcing you to go deeper. Your crisis might be the prelude to transformation. That's Jung's real message across time. The psyche is trying to make you whole, whether you cooperate or not. Every nightmare, every synchronicity, every emotional crisis is part of that process. Not bad for a guy who talked to his soul and lived to tell about it. Want to be like Jung? Start paying attention to your dreams. Look for the patterns in your life. Face your shadow. And most importantly, stop trying to be normal. Because as Jung showed us, what we call normal is often just collective neurosis, and true mental health might look pretty weird to the outside world. Remember what he said? Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. That's a call to the greatest adventure possible, the journey to become yourself. The Ancient of Days. Picture this. An old man with a flowing beard reaching down from the clouds with a geometric compass, measuring out the universe like an architect. William Blake painted him, but this image? It's as old as human consciousness itself. The idea that the universe didn't just happen. It was designed, measured, calculated. The demiurge. Now this gets spicy. The Gnostics said the material world was created by a lesser god, a cosmic craftsman who thought he was the supreme being but was actually just a pretender. Think about that. They're saying our physical reality is the product of divine incompetence. That's a cosmic rebellion. And here's where it gets really interesting. What if the Gnostics were onto something profound about the nature of creation itself? Every creator knows that moment when their creation takes on a life of its own, becomes something different than what they intended. What if that is a fundamental pattern of reality? Yahweh and Yaldabaoth talk about a complicated relationship. Is the God of the Old Testament the true highest God, or is he the demiurge in disguise? The Gnostics went there and it cost them everything. But they asked a question we're still wrestling with. If there's a creator, what created the creator? Brahma, the creator aspect of the Hindu trinity. While Western religions get hung up on a single creator, Hinduism says creation is just one part of a cosmic cycle. Brahma creates, Vishnu preserves, Shiva destroys, and it all starts again. That's mythology and quantum physics in story form. Everything is cycles, everything is process. These myths are sophisticated technologies for transforming consciousness. In Hinduism, the concept of Brahman points to the ultimate, ineffable reality underlying all of existence. Brahman is often described as neti, not this, not that, pointing to the idea that any conceptualization we have of the absolute is inherently limited. This apophatic approach to spirituality suggests that the deepest truths can only be approached through negation, by stripping away all our assumptions and constructs to rest in the silent mystery of pure being. Every culture's creation story is a different interface for accessing the same fundamental creative force that moves through all things. The physicist David Bohm proposed the concept of the implicate order, the idea that beneath the surface level of reality we perceive, there is a deeper, more enfolded level where everything is interconnected. Bohm suggests that what we experience as distinct, separate phenomena are actually more like ripples on the surface of a vast ocean, temporary expressions of an underlying unity. This holographic view of reality has profound implications for our understanding of consciousness, causality, and the nature of existence. The question isn't which one is true. The question is which one awakens the creator in you. Look at your own life through this lens. Every crisis is a death and rebirth. Every challenge is an invitation to recreate yourself. You are creating them cycles. And once you understand this, you become a conscious participant in your own evolution. Think about it. Even our DNA follows this pattern. Creation, preservation, destruction, rebirth. It's mythology, biology, physics, psychology. The universe keeps telling us the same story at every scale. And oh boy, these scales are really something else. Ptah, the Egyptian creator who spoke the world into existence. Sound familiar? Let there be light. Every major religion has this idea that creation starts with language, with sound, with vibration. These ancient people understood something fundamental about reality that modern physics is just catching up to. Everything is vibration. Everything is frequency. Prometheus. Now here's a different kind of creator. He made us and upgraded us, gave us fire, gave us technology, gave us the power to create for ourselves. And what did he get for it? Chained to a rock, having his liver eaten daily. Every creator who's tried to elevate humanity has faced the same story. The system doesn't like upgrades. Viracocha, the Incan creator who came from the south, taught humans civilization, then walked across the Pacific Ocean promising to return. This same story shows up everywhere. The civilizing creator who leaves but promises to come back. It's like humanity has this collective memory of being uplifted and a collective hope for it to happen again. In the Hermetic tradition, the principle of correspondence, often stated as above, so below, suggests that patterns and structures are mirrored across different scales of reality. This idea is present in fields as diverse as fractal geometry, systems theory, and depth psychology. This is a profound interconnectedness between the microcosm of the individual and the macrocosm of the universe. Odin sacrificed himself to himself, hanging on the world tree for 9 days to gain wisdom. That's next level. A creator god who's willing to suffer to expand consciousness. He gave up an eye for wisdom. What are we willing to give up for understanding? The Hopi creation story. Multiple worlds, each one destroyed and recreated when humanity loses its way. Sounds like climate change anxiety? These are warnings, templates, maps for understanding cycles of civilization. Here's what's incredible about creator deities. They all tell different parts of the same story. Creation through sound word, creation through measurement geometry, creation through sacrifice, creation through cycles of destruction and renewal. These are different human cultures mapping the same cosmic processes. But here's the really mind-bending part. These are stories about how creation is happening right now, continuously. Every moment is creation. Every thought is creation. Every choice is creation. We're not just created, we're creators. The philosopher Alan Watts, drawing on Eastern wisdom traditions, often spoke of the illusion of the separate self. He argued that our conventional sense of being a distinct ego, separate from the world around us, is a mental construct obscuring a deeper truth, that we are inextricably intermixed with existence. Watts challenges us to awaken to our true nature as the eternal witness, the ground of being from which all phenomena arise. That's the real message of these ancient creator myths. The power of creation is present in every moment, in every being, as above, so below. The same patterns that create universes are at work in our own creative acts. Want to understand why these stories still matter? Because we're facing the same questions today. What does it mean to create? What are the responsibilities of creators? What happens when creation goes wrong? As we develop AI, as we manipulate genes, as we reshape our planet, we're living powerful creator myths. That's the eternal message of these creator deities. Creation is both a power and a responsibility. Whether you're creating universes or art or technology or just creating your own life, you're participating in something profound. Not bad for primitive myths, right? From Newton's calculus to modern AI algorithms, from Leonardo's flying machines to SpaceX rockets, from Plato's Republic to blockchain governance. The patterns keep repeating. The tools change, but the creative spirit remains the same. Elon Musk, our modern Prometheus, trying to give humanity the fire of space travel and electric revolution. But just like the ancient firebringer, he's controversial as hell. One day he's sending cars into space, the next he's buying Twitter and causing chaos. But that's the thing about creator archetypes. They're disruptive by nature. Banksy, the anonymous artist trickster, turning capitalism's walls into canvases for rebellion. Someone who proves you don't need a face to change how people see the world. His art self-destructs at auctions. That's pranking the art world, forcing us to question what value even means. Satoshi Nakamoto, talk about mysterious creators, creates Bitcoin, changes the entire concept of money, then vanishes into thin air. Like Kaiser Soze. That's some divine creator energy right there. Drops the code like some modern sacred text and disappears, leaving humanity to figure it out. The whole Web 3.0 movement. That's humanity trying to recreate itself in digital space, NFTs, DAOs, the metaverse. It's about our age-old drive to create new worlds, new societies, new forms of being. Artificial intelligence. We're creating new forms of intelligence, of consciousness. Web 3.0 meets Life 3.0. When we train AI on human knowledge, are we playing Prometheus? Or are we more like the demiurge, creating something that might think it's supreme but isn't quite there? IoT, 3D printing, sensors. We're making the material world smart, connected, responsive. The ancient dream of animating matter is becoming reality. Every smart device is a tiny piece of that old alchemical dream, bringing consciousness to matter. Kendrick Lamar isn't just making music. He's creating modern mythology, weaving personal struggle into universal narrative. When he says, "I got royalty inside my DNA," that's a creation myth for the modern age. And if you was conflicted, the age of Aquarius is happening right now. Old structures breaking down, new forms of consciousness emerging. But instead of burning sage and chanting, we're writing code and building networks. We are moving beyond infinity. Look at what we're doing with quantum computing, with space exploration, with biotechnology. We're pushing past every limit our ancestors thought was fixed. The infinite is a frontier we're actually touching. The great unveiling is happening in real time. Every scientific breakthrough, every technological innovation, every artistic revolution is pulling back another veil. We're creating new ways of being human. Here's what's really important about contemporary creators. They're showing us that creation is about vision, responsibility, and consequences. When you create something truly new, you're changing how reality works. That's why we end with the creator inside you. Because all these patterns, from ancient deities to modern innovators, are maps of potential that exist in every human being. These aren't just stories we're telling, they're stories that are telling us. Every creator archetype is a dormant potential within your psyche, waiting to be activated. The mathematician, the mystic, the rebel, the sage, they're all frequencies you can tune into. The question isn't which one you are, but which one you'll choose to amplify next. The biologist Rupert Sheldrake has proposed the concept of morphic resonance, the idea that the forms and behaviors of systems are shaped by the cumulative memory of similar systems across time and space. Sheldrake suggests that this kind of collective memory might explain everything from the formation of crystals to the evolution of instincts in animals to the transmission of ideas in human cultures. While his theory remains controversial, it points to the possibility of a deep, living intelligence permeating the fabric of the cosmos. You're not just reading about creators, you're reading about different aspects of yourself. The mathematician, the mystic, the artist, the rebel. They're all frequencies of human potential. The question is, which ones will you amplify? Self-discovery means finding your unique creative signature. Passion means your creator energy trying to manifest. Courage means the willingness to bring something new into existence. Your dreams, your intuitions, your crazy ideas that won't let you sleep, are the same creative force that shaped universes trying to express itself through you. Your traumas, your struggles, your moments of doubt are raw material for the creator inside you. The real message of all creation stories, ancient and modern, creation is happening right now through every one of us. The only question is, are you ready to consciously participate in it? In the end, the great lesson of all the creators and visionaries we've explored is this. The universe is not a static, pre-given reality that we passively observe. Rather, it is a participatory process, a cosmic dance in which our own consciousness is the ultimate creative force. As the Sufi mystic Rumi put it, you are not a drop in the ocean, you are the entire ocean in a drop. Each of us contains within us the seeds of infinite potential, waiting to be unleashed through the alchemy of self-discovery and creative expression. Want to know the secret of all great creators? From ancient deities to modern innovators, they transformed consciousness. And that potential exists in everyone watching this right now. Because in the end, the greatest creation isn't the next app or artwork or invention. It's who you become in the process of creating. That's the real hero's journey, the real philosopher's stone, the real technological singularity, the moment when you realize that you're both created and a creator.